But what we know right now is that Dante Moore, the five-star quarterback out of Detroit Martin Luther King, has announced that he's going to make a decision tomorrow on TV. Dante Moore, the five-star QB, will make his announcement at noon Eastern on SportsCenter. That's right. And welcome in on this Thursday, 1 o'clock, Maize and Blue Review. Michigan football today. I'm Dennis Fithian, joined by former Wolverine Jim Scarcelli, who's ready to go. Scar, how are you?
I'm great. Yeah, we're talking recruiting. We're talking Michigan defense. A lot of good stuff going on to get into.
Yeah, there is a lot of good stuff. You are right. And we've got a breakdown for everybody that's out there that is watching on the screen. We got the phone number for you there that is available for you. Before we go any further, I do see that we have breaking news. Now, we had breaking news last week, and it was USC and UCLA joining the Big Ten. That was breaking news, Scott. That was big-time breaking news. But for some people, that's the breaking news sounder. This might be just as big as breaking news. I don't know if you saw this or not. This is just coming down. A cold one at the Big House. There's a bipartisan bill in Michigan that would allow alcohol sales at college sporting events. The Chrysler Center, Yost Ice Arena, Michigan Stadium, a beer at Michigan Stadium. You have to, I didn't prep you for this one, so this is just, throwing it right at you without you having time to consider and going over all the ramifications. But how do you feel about the possibility of being able to buy a beer at the Big House?
College sporting crowds are different. I worked at Tiger Stadium for 5 years, so I got some experience in this, and that crowd is a little different than a college football crowd. I think people are a little more, controlled, just a little more education at a college game. I think there'd be less problems than you might find at a Detroit Lions game, opposed to a Michigan or Michigan State football game if you're allowing alcohol. So I don't really have a problem with it. I think the crowds are going to behave a little better. I mean, they've tailgated forever, but I don't see it being a problem.
I saw a story that was included and they put a study along with it that said that binge drinking goes down at college stadiums that allow beer. And I didn't read the story, but it has to be along the line of thinking that people that are going into the stadium know that for the next 3 hours are not going to be allowed to drink. So they just pound as many as they possibly can and then go into the stadium, where if you knew that you were able to buy a beer at the Big House, you wouldn't necessarily walk up to the corner and, have to, pound, 6-7 beers in a row before you're going in. So I know this, that any stadium that is being allowed to do that, we'll just say Michigan, that is opening up the floodgates with money. And so, it's more money. They have a study saying that it cuts down on binge drinking. Does it look good? I think the part of that story as well is they said that 8 out of the 14 stadiums right now in the Big Ten allow alcohol sales. So it's not like Michigan would be the first one or anything. So, there's precedent there across the conference, and, there's money to be made. You have to just, I don't say just, you come out, if you're the president and you pledge, I don't know if it's half the money or just a portion of the proceeds go to, whether, you get treatment for binge drinking or alcoholism or any of that. You just go through that. I don't want to be trite about it, but you do that. Maybe there's some actually positive that can come out of there. But when it points to this, I know that you mentioned the pros. For the longest time in Detroit on a Sunday, you couldn't sell beer before noon. And I would work down at these tailgates prior to Lions games, and people would be tailgating. You'd have all the beer, but I would work at the bar. You'd go in, I'd be at the bar, and before noon there would be anybody in the bar. You'd just be sitting there because they couldn't buy alcohol. A few people in there buying coffee, but man, noon hits and people would go in there. I mean, it'd be wild. So it's just something that don't be surprised if it happens, and it could be here soon.
Hey, I'm for it. They're going to make some more money, and if they, it helps you. It helps you to spend money on other things, and I think it's going to be something we can control. There'll be a few problems. They'll have to have a few more security, but
yeah,
I think Michigan people in general and the whole college scene will be a good environment still. It won't be like the Lions back in the day at the Silverdome. You remember those days? The Silverdome with the Lions was it was a different crowd, man.
Well, it was a different crowd. My brother, for about 10 years, had front row seats in the upper deck in the corner. And, they had 80,000 seats. And, 20, the day before the game, there'd be 20,000 seats, and there'd be a threat of a blackout. So Ford or other big corporations would buy the 10, 15,000 seats, and they'd just give them away. And so you were going in for free. And so that brought in a kind of crowd that was just there to, hey, let's just get, sauced up as we can, and let's go to the game. And then there would be tons of fights. So I think that was part of it, but I want to be the first one to do this, Scar. I want to complain about the prices of beer before they even say that it's going to go. I'm not paying $8.50 for a beer at Michigan Stadium when I could chug one for 50 cents before the game.
Oh, good luck with that.
I know. All right. That's all I wanted to do, is be the first one. I haven't had a chance really, I think, to be the first one on anything like that. All right. Scar already mentioned what we're going to be talking about here. We've got some people already lining up comment-wise, and you can always put your comments up there. We get to them in real time, and so we're going to do that. How good Michigan's defense could be. They were pretty good last year. We'll preview the Penn State Nittany Lions, who Michigan is going to play at home this year on December the 15th. Who is the better coach? You see this in the offseason, the Big Ten coaches being ranked, Harbaugh against Day, Harbaugh against his coach, Harbaugh against James Franklin. We'll ask Jim Scarcelli who he thinks the better head coach is. And then Dante Moore is set to make his announcement, as you heard there in the outgo, or in the at the start. And that, of course, plays right into name, image, and likeness. All right, Scar, here it is. You've got Dante Moore. He's announcing on ESPN tomorrow. This week, Jordan Acker was on vacation, but he put a series of tweets out. One of them was a prediction using name, image, and likeness as a recruiting incentive will be nearly impossible for most schools to keep up. A lot of Michigan fans didn't like that, but here we are with name, image, and likeness, and the guy that Michigan has been pursuing since he's been in 7th grade. They're going to find out in 23 hours. It'll be a reality where we'll know where Moore is going to go to college.
Yeah, he looks good in that uniform right there, boy. But yeah, I've seen this kid play. He is the real deal. He was the top kid at that camp, which all those top quarterbacks, and that's not by accident. He can play. He's smart. He's accurate. He's tough. He's mobile. The kid's good. What I would say to him as a guy who played football at Michigan and wanted to live in the state after, there's a lot of advantages having been a former player and continuing to live in the state of Michigan. There's a lot of advantages to that. You go to Oregon and then you're done playing and you come back to Detroit, there's not much love there. You go to Notre Dame and you come back to Michigan, Detroit, not a lot of love there. I mean, Jerome Bettis did it, but it's something that I wonder how much he's thought about that. I think about Mike Weber. Mike Weber went to Ohio State, and now, you're going to come back home and look for work in Detroit. Who cares? You went to Ohio State. How many Ohio State alumni are going to be in the Michigan area to help you? So, but I don't know what's going on through his mind. I'm sure he's already made his decision. I sure as heck hope he stays with Michigan. We heard all these talk, all these rumors, did Phil Knight come up with a shoe contract? I don't know. That's one of the things we hear out there. Is that just BS? Can we compete with that? Again, I was recruited. So you look at things, you look at the roster. He looks at Michigan, McNamara's got maybe this year and next. JJ, how many more years does JJ have? He looks at Maddox. What's Oregon's situation? They got the quarterback. They got a transfer coming in there. Notre Dame, I don't know what their quarterback situation is. Those are the three big teams we're thinking he's going to make his decision based on. But, I just hope this, we don't know where the NIL stuff is, what kind of a role it plays. And we'll get into some of the thoughts on Acker in a minute. But as far as Dante Moore, heck, I'm like everybody else. Hope he comes. I think he's the real deal. There's a lot of positives being a former player. The rest of your life staying in this state, Dante, it's there forever, man. A former Michigan player living in the state of Michigan. There's a lot of great things about that.
I know guys can look good in their shorts and shoulder pads, throwing the ball around. You mentioned that Elite 11. I was watching some of the video of just Dante Moore. He was named the MVP of the quarterbacks that were there. Man, the ball really just explodes out of his hands. I mean, he's got the size physically. He doesn't look like he's going to be a high school senior, man. He looks like he's a 5-year pro already in the way that he's throwing the ball. So, he passes the look test. Ghost Rider saying he expects Dante to stick with Michigan. He realizes with college football, the changing landscape, he will get more exposure at Michigan. Oregon is in flux with both SoCal and UCLA leaving. I wonder if that's going to factor in. You mentioned name, image, and likeness, and we hear all the time the kid Rashada going to Miami. There was a talk of $9.5 million there. Rashada came out once he committed to Miami and put a statement out saying, no, those things aren't factual. And you think, like, where are these guys getting the numbers? There's been a few people that have said some things about Oregon. Well, if it's an agent, calling up somebody in the media, if the NCAA calls, the agent's not going to say anything about promising anybody money because they know it's against the rules. If they call the kid and they say, hey, were you promised $3 million or whatever, the kid just has to say, no, I wasn't. And then, it's done. So it's hard to, even when you see people saying that, like they're getting money, it's hard to prove it. And that's the whole thing that has a lot of people confused from the inside, from the outside. Scar, is that a lot of numbers are being thrown around. The NCAA seems powerless to do anything. And yet here we are. Maybe Oregon's offering Dante Moore $10 million. Maybe they're offering him $5 million with, a shoe contract and Nike commercials and charter planes and all these things. But everything seems sponsorable. Why couldn't Michigan, if it really wanted to compete with that? I believe a little bit of sticker shock when it comes down to it. Michigan didn't want to get into, an arms race with a high school quarterback. They wanted to, their approach. It seems, and they've had a consistent message that they're taking a wait and see, and they would rather reward people a year, 2, 3 down the line once they're at Michigan with the riches, not promise it to players that haven't set foot on campus yet. But that's dangerous because if I'm Dante Moore and somebody's saying, hey, here's $5 million, you didn't have to throw a pass for us. And if Michigan's promise, and the way I'm throwing it out there is like, hey, Dante, you can have $5 million, but it's just going to take you a couple of years. I mean, the guy's going to take the guaranteed money up front every time.
Yeah, I'm kind of looking at like a pro football team. If we got a certain amount of money to spend, what is your strategy? What is your philosophy? Some of these schools, Michigan's philosophy, according to, if you read Jordan Acker's and you look at what we're thinking is Michigan's philosophy is more, we want to pay guys or help guys after they're already proven. Okay. And some of these other people are more upfront. You're a 5-star kid, and then we're going to try to help you out up front. It's kind of like being a free agent in any sport, NFL, NBA, they're giving you the money up front because of what you've done. That's why a 5-star kid's a 5-star kid. He's not a 3-star kid. So there's the different philosophies there. And it appears that Michigan's philosophy is a little less, from my take of it, it's going to make it harder to compete for the 5-star kids with our approach. I think with the 3- and 4-star kids that are proven players that end up proving themselves over time, our system will do everything we can, probably do a great job of rewarding guys that have proved themselves. But from what I'm hearing, it might be a disadvantage trying to recruit the 5-star kids. Anyway, Denny, that's kind of where, I'm looking at, I think about me as a free agent. After I got done with Michigan, I had 4 teams offer me contracts. The Raiders offered me the biggest signing bonus, and it was a little bit of a factor. Tampa Bay, the Giants, Kansas City. Those were the four. And the Raiders offered me the most. Plus, I thought I had the best chance to make the team. It's very similar. It's up a little bit of that upfront money helps.
Yeah.
So I don't know what I'm throwing out at there, but I'm trying to analyze Jordan Acker's statement, and it appears that we're going. I said it last week. I'm hoping that these schools that are giving all this money up front to these kids have problems in the locker room, and it looks like our approach is going to be you've got to prove it, and again that might hurt you with the 5-star kids.
Well, one thing we know for sure right now is Michigan doesn't have a president. We know that the previous president, when it came down to Jim Harbaugh and Mark Schlissel, even though it was during a pandemic, that the things, it didn't seem like it was matching up. And usually when you have a harmonious athletic department, you're going from a president, athletic director, and head coach. Michigan just doesn't have that right now because they have a vacancy there. You're working with the regents. You have your statement about what you can say. It is technically illegal. The NCAA has one rule. You can't pay for play. You can't pay players, and yet everybody's blowing past that and doing it anyway. So even though some of the coaches are coming out talking about salary caps and we'll do anything, and it's crazy how much some of the behind the scenes stuff and money is already being talked about before guys are even in a transfer portal, before they've committed or anything else, and then they end up at these very schools that the reports are coming out. But you just wonder behind the scenes if Michigan is missing somebody that could be that upfront person behind the scenes contacting these guys and saying, look, we're not supposed to be promising you anything, but we are promising you everything. And that's, to me, that is what's being missed here. Jared Wengler is a Michigan man. His dad was a Michigan man. He's towing the company line. Behind the scenes, is he like, no, we're going to give it to you. Don't worry about this 2-3 years down the line. I don't know. I don't think so. But is Michigan missing a point man behind the scenes that is ready to, promise the cash? I don't know. I don't know. What do you think Ward Manuel and Jim Harbaugh, they both have these similar type statements about, well, guys can, cut their own deals. But they've been very reluctant to get anywhere close, to talking about, being competitive with the other schools that appear to be promising money.
Yeah, because that's, the statement is that Jim has made is, he wants to be transformative and not transactional, but does he really, he's the guy going in these living rooms, and is he facing problems because of that statement? Only he knows the truth to that statement. Is he making that statement because he's towing the company line? Because that's what Ward has told him. That's our direction. But does he really believe it? So that's where I'm at. And Acker talked about Title IX. Okay, that was one of the big concerns I had with was what role would Title IX play in this? But apparently you have to have an advisor. I forget what the title you have to have an advisor for NIL for men and one for women. So you probably have to, the university would have to provide that. But as far as distributing money and how those opportunities come, the university, Ohio State doesn't care about that. Ryan Day said $13 million we need to maintain this roster. Michigan State doesn't care about that. They've got $500 per month for every football player and men's basketball. Everyone else is getting nothing. So they don't care about that guy doesn't care about Title IX, but our guy cares about Title IX. And and those kind of things. But when Jim Harbaugh is out there recruiting and our coaching staff is competing against these people, that kid in the living room doesn't care about what your university stance is on Title IX. You know what I mean? If he sees his mother struggling to pay the phone bill or the rent or whatever. So I'm just throwing it out there. The question, the $1 million question I wish I knew the answer to is this statement from Jim Harbaugh, transformative, other transactional, is in his gut. Does he believe that, or is he saying it because that's the direction he's getting from the board and Ward Manuel?
Yeah, and some of it, Scar, like Michigan, this has been the hill that they have stood on for years. Like, we're not doing anything when it comes down to paying players. That's been their hill. And, they have, Harbaugh has talked about it. It's hard to, stay up with the cheaters since, his 7 years that he's been here. But I would bet if I was a multimillionaire and then I wanted to get out and I wanted Dante Moore to go to Michigan, and behind the scenes at some point, I would be able to have some contact with Jim Harbaugh. I would say, look, I've got 10, 20 million and you guys don't have to have anything to do with it. But if you really want, what I'm telling you is you tell Jim Harbaugh that I've got $10 million and that I want to earmark it and I want to promise it to Dante Moore. Is Michigan come back saying, we don't want that point, man. We don't want anything to do. Or are they going to be like, you can do whatever you want? I think that Michigan's missing that part, that person. And, how they end up getting that person that wants their point man. Ohio State has one. You mentioned Matt Ishbia. He appears to be Michigan State's legal bag man. He's tripping over every couple hours another million or two that he's making. He's got plenty of money to throw at Michigan State. He gave Mel Tucker $95 million. I don't know. Is Michigan's missing this billionaire or multimillionaire that wants to? Where's Michigan's Phil Knight?
Yeah, I don't know that it's lacking people that want to step up and help our football program. I think it seems to be more of a moral decision that our leadership. Now, listen, we wouldn't even care, Denny, if Michigan was sitting 4, 5, 6 in recruiting right now, and we had a couple 5 stars and a whole lot more 4 stars, we wouldn't even be having this discussion.
That's right.
A lot of people Michigan people are concerned because we're just not seeing the results.
Right. So
we have a right to question, and something also I'm wondering, is the Michigan leadership philosophy? When I say leadership, I mean Ward and the regents to let's spend more money on facilities. Let's spread the money out amongst all of our teams. Let's have a great field hockey scoreboard or more money for the swim team, and let's have top of the line stuff for everybody. But again, that's not helping Jim Harbaugh when he has to go and recruit against the enemy. So if that philosophy of let's be great with everybody, and we don't want to be just singling out so much attention to football. I don't know, but I know we wouldn't be panicking if we were sitting in our numbers were doing better from a recruiting standpoint. But again, that Ohio State he threw his figure out that he needed. To maintain that roster.
No question about that. If we're sitting around, whether we're with the regents or we're the business advisors, and they've got 20 people that have been engaged that are, the leaders when it comes to giving money for facilities, giving money directly for Michigan for these improvements. Do they want those 20 people taking the money that they have earmarked going directly to the university? They don't want to say, hey, you guys can go out and do whatever you want, because they might not be getting that money then. So, it's about where's that dollar going from the people that have been donating. What Michigan wants, and, it's like we all want. We all want somebody just out there, giving us free money. Michigan wants additional boosters to come along that can get involved in paying the high school players. They don't necessarily want the people that are giving them money, unless, these person's like, hey, I've been given $2 million. Now I'm going to start giving 10. 7 to the recruits and 3. I don't know how that works. I don't think so. Like, you earmark a certain amount of money. The danger I think Michigan might be scared of, if somebody's giving $1 million to whatever to go to the athletic department, but that same person might say, forget me giving you guys the $1 million. I'm going to go give it to a high school player. Then you're like, whoa, we've lost $1 million.
That's what I mean. We talked about this 2 months ago, you and I, is the competition within the university. If there's certain donors and they want to help the university, do they does the leadership dictate and say, no, we want that money going toward all of athletics. We want a new scoreboard for our field hockey team, or can you send it to NIL? And and that's the question, where are we at with that?
Yeah, and where are we at with the lawyer talk? I read all that from Acker, and one of the parts there is he was making it sound like he knew like there's trouble coming for these schools. Like, if somebody mentioned like, look, what are you talking about? You can get all this back as a tax write-off. And Acker's like, oh, no lawyer is going to do that. Well, I don't know. Are all these Notre Dame, when they came out and talked about their collective, I saw Brady Quinn, the former quarterback, I saw his quote. he mentioned that this is a nonprofit collective. Now, I don't know how they get around, the legal parts of saying, look, go ahead, whatever you're donating, you can go ahead. But they have some lawyers looking at it. Is Ohio State and Notre Dame, are these boosters? Are they going after these collectives a certain way where in 6 months, in a year, you mentioned Ishbia, where, not only NCAA, but, you're going to have the government getting involved, with tax write-offs or whatever else. The Acker made it sound like you better watch what you're doing there. I don't know if he's right or not about that.
Yeah, Danny, I'm just frustrated with it because I just want to see numbers. I want to see kids starting to come, and we're going to find something out tomorrow, man. Friday. We're going to find out tomorrow. Just where are we at with this thing? And if he packs up and goes to the other side of the country, we got to reevaluate things.
Yes, especially with Oregon losing their 2 power schools, they don't have any idea. Nobody's going to be watching them now. They might not even be guaranteed to get into the college football playoff. And but just today, the SEC was rumored to be going after, I don't know, was it Florida State, Miami, and Clemson? Completely. That's going to dissolve the ACC if somebody goes after, or maybe Washington, maybe Oregon, but maybe not. Maybe they'll just leave him out there. Now he's going to be playing in the Pac-8 with no direct line and getting into the, to the playoff. That might be something that, that could factor in here.
Listen, Michigan, what I'm reading is, Jared made a statement about, we'd rather pay our proven quarterback, or not pay, provide opportunities that our 2-3 year starting quarterback can make, 2-3 times what the make 4 or 5 million. A starting quarterback who's proven himself at Michigan, that we want to be that kind of a place. Well, my thing is that the majority of the guys that I remember playing with, they weren't the starting quarterback. There's a lot of second, third string guys that those are the guys I'm concerned with. I want to be able to retain and keep guys as they go through our program and we develop them. Because a guy who's a second string guy who gets nothing or doesn't have any opportunities, that's when it's hard to maintain your locker room. I keep talking about the Michigan State $500 a month deal. That makes your locker room a hell of a lot easier to maintain that chemistry when everybody's getting something, not just the starting quarterback getting so much and then crumbs for everybody else.
Well, I don't know. I've seen enough pro guys that, they see rookies coming in, getting money. You know what? 99% of them don't complain about anything. They like seeing guys get money. They like seeing the big-time players get big-time cash, and that's for people want to win. And so if I'm a junior, even if I'm a starter, I would like to see them go out and get the number 1 defensive end out there. That's going to help the team, and that's going to help the kid out. Don't hate the kid. Hate the system. And that's 99% of what NFL players, that's the tune they could sing. And Jared Wengler, when I hear him say all of this, if I'm an agent, I'm just laughing out loud. If I'm sitting here with Dante Moore saying, hey, Dante, what Jared is telling you is that if you play and you're any good in 3 years, you can make the money. We're telling you can have it before you even throw a pass. Who the hell you think he's going to pick?
No, I get it. That's the same comparison with, signing bonuses. There's a reason Aiden Hutchinson, got so much money to sign his name. He was a 5-star, college prospect, and he's number 1 pick, and that's why he's going to sign his name for so much more money. He doesn't have to prove anything. So there's, and we'll see what happens, Denny.
Right. And, so I'm going to take a step back, and I've just been screaming and yelling, and all this, but, we'll see what happens. The effect of Dante Moore, if he ends up going to Oregon, I don't think Michigan's just going to sit back and be like, well, hey, you win some, you lose some. We're really glad that, with our approach here. And if they go through the next 7 months and the very best players, they're in on some 5 stars. If it gets down to it, the 5 stars are like, thanks, but no thanks. We're going to Miami. We're going to Florida. We're going with the money. And, the transformational is not winning out over transactional. At some point, they may look and say, we need to change our approach. Now, can they sacrifice a recruiting? Can they burn an entire recruiting class? They'll get 20 some odd players, they'll just be missing out on the 5 stars and the top 4 stars. Maybe that'll work out for them. And then maybe they can, get back to another plan and say, hey, we need to change up. And then next year they'll be in the mix with everyone else. That's a wait and see strategy. It could still work for them. But if they end up out of the top 25 in recruiting, I don't think Michigan fans are going to be sitting out there saying, well, you guys all, took the wait and see approach, good luck. People are going to be like, we told you so. I mean, everybody's out there playing one way and you're playing another way, and everybody told you it wasn't going to work. And now you're out here, going to change your plan. So that's what everybody thinks. There are, a lot of Michigan fans, especially alums, Scar, they're saying, hey, you know what? We don't want Michigan to cross any lines. We want this university playing it, right how you're supposed to, and get guys that want to play here. Screw Dante Moore if he's going for money. Let's go with guys that want to play for Michigan, and so we're going to see how this plays out over the next 7 months. Yeah, we're going to find out tomorrow, and if we got to reevaluate, then we got to reevaluate it. But we'll see, because we're going to get some answers tomorrow. We are. A lot of feedback coming in. We're throwing it up on the screen, and we've been. If we're not reading it specifically, we are reading it, and it is absorbing. What we are talking about. But we have to get to our preview. Let me just close on this real quick, Denny. Michigan, in my opinion, should be having just won the Big Ten championship with those big rings on their finger. They should be sitting, in my opinion, no worse than 7-8. We should be getting a lot of 4 and 5 star kids in our committed right now, in my opinion. And this NIL stuff, and it's just not happening, because right now we should be striking as hot as we've ever been coming off that Big Ten championship season. So I'm going to end it at that, and hopefully the recruiting will pick up. No, and as soon as you say something, I could talk for another 5 minutes, but that doesn't sound like a very smart thing to do. All right, let's go to Penn State. Penn State, Michigan won that game last year, 21-17. It was just 7-6 at the half. But if you think about Penn State's season, they ended up 7-6 on the season. Not a good year, and they started out pretty good. But if you look at their last 22 games, they are 500. One thing for sure is they are going to have their quarterback, Sean Clifford, 4-year starter, all the way through there. They got pretty good defense, Scar, number 2 in Big Ten games only, under 17 points a game. That was better than Michigan, but their offense was terrible last year. Number 9 in the Big Ten, 13th in running the football, under 100 yards per game. They just don't have the firepower offensively, and they lose Dotson, their outstanding wide receiver, to the pros. They do bring 7 of those guys back in offense, but they weren't very good, and they bring 5 back on defense. That's what we're looking at with Penn State. I really like what I'm seeing happening at Penn State mainly from the defensive standpoint. Now, when I say I like it, I like who they hired to replace who I thought was one of the best defensive coordinators in the Big Ten, the guy that got the Virginia Tech job. Danny, I forget his name, but he's a hell of a defensive coach. And I don't think that the guy they brought in is all that good. Manny Diaz, the guy that was fired at Miami, the head coach. Yeah. Well, I like the idea that Manny Diaz is going to be running that defense, because I'm not overly impressed with him as a defensive coach. So I like that. That's a good start. Brett Pye, by the way, is the guy that went. That guy is a stud. Brett Pry is his name. He's good. Yeah, Pye, I think. Pye, P-Y-E. And I'm glad he's gone. He's good, and I'm glad he's gone, because he was a darn good defensive coach. And they look. Penn State recruits great players. They're going to be as good as they're right with us. Every year they're right with us in recruiting, so they're going to have really good players on that defense. That football team will have really, really good players. So we're not going against some undermanned team. But I think our coaches are better. I think the Clifford kid is good. I think he's a good player. And the problem with him the last couple of years, and again with these spread offenses, they run their quarterback so much the kid's beat up all the time. The kid's been beat up most of the time, and that's the downside of a team
that Penn State, that runs the hell out of them. It makes it tough to defend Penn State's offense because they do run that kid so much. Again, that's why I like that we have two, and we're going to play two. So he's a good player, healthy. I don't want to deal with him. He's a good player. But you said they got 7 back on offense, 5 back on defense. Yeah, last year they just couldn't get it together. Lost a bunch of close games.
Yes.
You know, I mean, the Michigan State game, we don't make the play at the end. The Michigan State game, those were close games that just didn't go their way. So that's how football goes sometimes. But we got him at home. He runs what Franklin runs what he runs. It's very similar to what Ohio State runs. Their offenses are very, very similar. They don't use their tight ends much like Michigan, a little bit. But it's a game I like. I like it mainly because of the new defensive coordinator, and we've done well against them at home. But it'll be there'll be some talented players on their sideline.
Yeah, one thing about Penn State, so they weren't all that good last year, but over the last few years, and with Franklin in there, he's recruited well. They've got a great home field advantage. Been going up to State College, that's a tough place to play, especially at night. I know some of the numbers don't bear it out when they have the whiteout games or whatever else, but they seem like they've done a pretty good job. Seem like, standing toe-to-toe with Ohio State, before last year. And this is one of the questions we're going to ask. Do you take Jim Harbaugh or James Franklin? Do you rank them as better coaches? And last year, I wanted to put Jim Harbaugh in front of James Franklin because I think he is a better coach, but Franklin had beat Ohio State and had an even record with Michigan. So it was really hard. You could say, this is what I think, and this is what it looks like. Yeah, the numbers were pointing to Franklin. And that's the thing about Penn State, Scar, is that you look against Michigan here. They don't have very good last year was huge for them, just how it plays out overall, because if they would have had a good season a year ago, they would be 4-3 against Jim Harbaugh. And, it would be difficult to be sitting here talking about that. You think that and maybe Michigan didn't beat Ohio State. Michigan's got Penn State had a better record against Ohio State and a better record against Michigan. It would have been hard at that point to pick Harbaugh. But, of course, last year happened, and I think that nudges, to me, Harbaugh in front of James Franklin.
Hey, I respect James Franklin big time because I think he's won at two. He's won at Vanderbilt, man. You can go to Vanderbilt and win. That says something about you. He came over and, he took over for O'Brien, who was coming off all the craziness they had and trying to get their program back. But I respect the guy as a coach. He's won at 2 places. Tough place to win, Vanderbilt. So much of making the decision about these 2 guys is who are they hiring as assistant coaches? And Jim, I think he's doing it right now, big time with our defense. I think the direction of our offense now is better. And I'm thinking maybe Franklin might have made a mistake with Diaz. Let's see how well he does with that decision, because that'll be a big factor on how well he does. I think their offense kind of limits them and doesn't, I like the idea of being a little more diverse, having tight ends, because, again, I think it helps your overall program when you have a little more of a diverse offense. They just don't do much of that.
Yeah, I think some of the losses that you look at, one at Penn State, that was that Saquon Barkley game, that night game. That was a tough one. Trace McSorley had a really good game for Penn State as well. That was a tough one. Michigan had their chance. Didn't have a very good first half there at Happy Valley the last time before last year. That's when Ronnie Bell had that play right in the end zone. That was going to tie the game up right at the end, right?
Yeah.
And then the pandemic year, both teams were struggling, but Penn State was able to come in and get their first win. That was a tough one to swallow.
Yeah, I like what we're doing against them. I think I just like our chances, and I like what we're doing on both sides of the ball. But we needed that play at the end. But they had big time players, man. They had defensive end causing that sack strip at the end. Oh, that's a high draft pick kid. They got receivers that are highly picked and good offensive line, and they do a great job recruiting defensive linemen. And the kid with the Cowboys, what's his name? He's the
Arce.
great player, man. They were able to, he can recruit, man. James Franklin is a recruiter. Funny story real quick. I heard him talking about who he likes to hire as assistant coaches. He wants assistant coaches that got pretty wives. He says, if you can't recruit a pretty woman, you're not going to be able to recruit a good player. It was funny. Maybe there's some truth to it, but he is a definite, you can see, when I hear him talk, he sounds like a highly intelligent man. You can see where he'd be able to go into any living room and recruit and talk to parents.
Yeah, he's got a little twinkle in his eye.
But my answer is I would take Harbaugh because I think in the long run he's making some better decisions about the overall program, the offense, and he's hiring. I'm hoping that he's really hired a better defensive coach than Franklin this past year.
Yeah, and I thought Franklin you had edged in front of Harbaugh with everything last year, but the statement of Michigan winning the game and beating Ohio State thrust Harbaugh back in front. Franklin. All right, we get to the Michigan defense, Scar, and you look at the stats from last year. If you just go to the Big Ten games, those are 9 games that Michigan played. They averaged just over giving up 19 points a game. That was 5th in the Big Ten. If you take all of the games, Michigan, that number comes down to 17.4, and they were a top 10 defense in the country. But the part where you'd say you have improvement is they gave up 29 points on the road to Nebraska. They gave up whatever it was to Michigan State. What was that, 37? They gave up to the Spartans, and then they did keep Ohio State, who was averaging they had the best offense in the country, and kept them under 30 points. So the playmakers, we've talked about this a couple times. Overall, there's room for improvement. Michigan's got to find those playmakers. That's the most important part.
Yeah, I've said this many times that our coaches always talked about defense versus the score being the most important stat. Who gives up the least points usually wins the Big Ten championship. But as a coach, and as I look at our defense, I want to be able to defend everybody. So we want to have a scheme that can slow down Ohio State, that can stop Iowa's 3 tight ends. If we got to play Wisconsin in a crossover in the championship game, we can put a plan together. We can stop Nebraska's option stuff that they're doing. So I want a defense that can do all of those things. We talk. I make quickly. You talk about Michigan State. They gave up 50 points to Ohio State. You can't go and beat certain teams and then have a defensive scheme that gives up 50 to the Buckeyes. But I think we have the potential to be a real good defense. We got a lot of good players back. We got some really good players that I think are going to step up and replace some of those guys. The questions I have is Minter, how sharp is he? McDonald did a great job modifying our scheme, creating problems for offenses. I think I got a lot of faith in Minter. I think he's proven it. He's been around. He's a smart guy. But I'm going to be watching early. When I watch our first couple of games, I'm looking at scheme. I'm looking at what he's doing. How good of a job is he creating problems for the defense? I'm going to be watching our D-line. I'm going to be looking at, we lost Sean Nua, and we've got Mike Elston. So, you'll see what kind of difference are we going to see in the technique of our defensive linemen and our defensive ends and our players? What difference will we see with Mike Elston coaching our defensive front than Sean Nua? Because as a high school coach, trust me, and I've seen guys that retired and right away they lost their offensive line coach and the technique went to hell with another guy who replaced them, or it got better with a certain guy at any position where you get a replacement. So I'm going to be looking at the D-line. I'm going to be looking at technique, and I have faith in him. I watched him coach in the spring. I watched him coach the other day at the camp. I think Mike Elston's a good coach. I think our techniques will be sound. We'll be well coached there. I'm looking at the big positions for me because of what we do defensively is our edge positions. Morris, Upshaw, Harrell, McGregor. So much of our pressures come from our edge guys. So much of what we do defensively to get pass rush comes from the edge players. I mean, we were able with the Mike McDonald scheme. He brings linebackers at times. He brings safeties off the edge at times, and those things are good. It creates problems for the defense. It helps other players get freed up because the offense is worrying about the safety blitz. They're worried about the linebacker blitz, and now an end might be freed up man one-on-one. But I'm looking to see of those edge guys because Hutchinson and Ojabo were so crucial for so much of our pressure. Many times when it was one-on-one. I have confidence that the guys, I watched them in the spring. I've watched them as backups this last year. Morris has got to have a big year. And then whoever fills that other position has got to have a big year. I got faith in them. I think, Denny, we're going to get more pass rush from our inside players. The structure of our defense, we don't normally get a lot of pressure from the inside defensive tackles. But I think with Jenkins in there, as he's going to be more athletic than Hinton was last year. Hinton was a great run stopper, plugger, two-gap guy, took on blocks, held the point with the double teams, but he didn't give us much pass rush. We're going to get pass rush from Jenkins, but overall, I've got high hopes. I think we've got great coaches. Jay Harbaugh's coming over to the defense. And we'll see how he does there. But you got Elston new, you got Minter new, but the system is intact. So our scheme is year 2, so the players should be better. The downside of year 2 with the scheme is everybody in the Big Ten knows what we do and how we do it. But the Minter has to take that advantage away by being unpredictable. As a defensive coach, just because you have a scheme and what you did the year before, the smart coaches like Bill Belichick and these guys, just because I defended you this way last year doesn't mean I'm going to defend you this way this year. If I was Jim, here's a comment from Antoine. If I was Jim and I get a guy that has great teaching ability and scheme, I would immediately hire an understudy to learn from that guy so you can keep the system going. Well, that's what we've done. That's what Jim's done because those guys work together, Danny, at Baltimore. Minter and McDonald worked together at Baltimore for many years. So they are definitely, I know I'm kind of going a little long here, but they know what they're going to do. That system is going to be just like it was when I played. You went from Jim Young to Gary Moeller to Bill McCartney and back to Gary Moeller and Lloyd Carr, and they all ran the same stuff. Nothing changed but the guy with the coordinator hat on.
Well, I'm going to tell you, you did go long, but I liked what you were bringing to the table. So I like listening to you talk about defense. I don't mind listening to you talk about offense either, but I really enjoyed you talking about defense there. And when I went to the close-up, I could almost read the authors or the names of those books that you had back there. So that's good stuff, man. I can listen to you talk about defense all day long.
Something about, defense versus the score. I'm surprised we were only 5th in the Big Ten last year, Denny. I thought we were a higher rated, but the thing that helps your defense versus the score, which is so important, is an offense that controls the ball. And we do quite a bit of that when you have a run game that does that. But I've got high hopes. I think we have the pieces together. I think Jim put he's got good, solid, good-looking, athletic kids we recruited. He gave them a lot of playing time last year. Morris played a lot last year. Upshaw, Harrell, McGregor, not much. But those kids have played. So the coaching staff has put them in a position to succeed this year. Minter, Elston, proven guys. So they got to step up. And if Elston can take it to a higher level than Nua did, that would be great. And if Minter can be as sharp as McDonald, that'll be we'll have a great defense there from a coaching standpoint.
Yeah, there's the areas to improve, and they've got some players that could jump up there and fill the voids. Great job, Scar.
One last thing, Denny, one last thing.
Go ahead.
Another thing real quick. I saw some different things in the spring, schematically, which I liked. They're different. It already tells me that this guy has a different mind. A lot of the same stuff we did, but some different stuff, which is good. It gives the offense more problems as long as we know what the heck we're doing and our kids have done it. So we will see. I believe we will see a very diverse defense that is well coached, that'll play with great technique. and we'll do great things.
Antoine talking about last year's defense being a bend but don't break. So, hey.
Well, it paid off against the Buckeyes because they drove it down there in field goal range, and we held them to field goals. It was a big factor in that game.
Well, we always talk about the 47-yard with good reason that Eric All had against Penn State, but Michigan also needed to have their defense come up and get a 4-and-out, and they did. They had a great 4 plays there at the end. All right, Scar, what's Michigan's next move? We know we've got some names in recruiting. One expected to come off the board tonight for Michigan, a couple tomorrow. Probably not for Michigan, so that we'll see where that leaves us after the weekend. If you did not know, right now, for the rest of the summer here, right up until the season opener, you can get free access to Maize and Blue Review. Use the code UFMFree22. Go to MichiganRivals.com. So we hope to see you there. Say hi to us on the Den. Scar, do you got a final thought?
No, we're just keeping our fingers crossed for Dante, man. Stay home, Dante. Be a Michigan man for life, brother. It's a great thing.
Stay home, Dante. I'm right with you. Great job, Scar. We'll see you next week.
Go Blue.
There he is.